Today we're here at the Conservatory of Flowers in Golden Gate Park. This is sort of the crown jewel of Golden Gate Park. It was originally constructed in 1879 and was reconstructed in 2002. So it's the original structure was here for well over 100 years, and this is your classic English conservatory. It was shipped from England around the Cape in South America up to San Francisco, and was originally purchased by James Lick for his estate, and it became problematic for him to install it, and so he donated it to the city, and the city placed it in Golden Gate Park in 1879, and it's been here since. We're in the dome room of the conservatory. This is also called the Lowland Tropic Room. The temperatures in here would simulate lowland tropical temperatures. So it's a warm, humid, moist, somewhat shady greenhouse. Sort of pan up to the top of the dome. I'm not sure how tall it is, but it's got to be 15 stories or so at its peak. Many of these plants are planted in the ground and have been established here for a number of years. When the conservatory was rebuilt, all of the plants were removed. The building was leveled and was completely reconstructed to the specifications of the original floor plan and original plans, down to the wood that they used redwood during the reconstruction. And so it's exactly the same as the original building. We have a nice little pond here, and you can see the steam coming up from it. And these grates here, these sort of ornamental grating on the floor, the heating system is underneath the grates. This is a hot water steam heating system. So the pipes run under the grates, heat up, and then radiate the heat through the grates, and that's how this greenhouse is heated. So there's no heaters visible, and you have this beautiful flooring, and that again was in the original plans. Okay, I'm standing in front of one of the original plants of the conservatory. It's a cycad, sort of a prehistoric cone-bearing plant, Zamia lindeni, and it's got, you can see the multiple trunks it has. And this plant is, a couple hundred years old. It's been here at the conservatory since 1879, and when the conservatory was rebuilt, they took special care to build a temporary greenhouse inside of the structure here to house this plant and two others, so that they wouldn't lose the sort of original plants that were in the building in the 1800s. Okay, I'm up here with Phil the philodendron. This is a monstera, and this is also one of the original plants at the conservatory. And you can see it's grown all the way up to the top of the building, and the branches have sort of drooped down, and this is one of the many leaves on the plant, and you can see the aerial roots that are hanging down, collecting moisture. Some have rooted into the ground, others are in the air. But this was also one that was housed. They didn't want to lose it when the conservatory was rebuilt, and so they built a greenhouse, temporary greenhouse around it to keep it alive. Okay, I'm standing next to another cycad, which is a group of prehistoric cone-bearing plants. This is a Dioon spinulosa, and this growth here, this is a female cone. Cycads are dioecious. They have male plants and female plants. So this plant will always produce female cones, and you need a male plant with a male cone in order to get seed. So and this is one of the other original plants that came with the conservatory in 1879. When the cones are receptive to pollen, they'll sort of separate a little bit, and that's when the pollen can be pollinated. We're in the Highland Tropics room of the conservatory. This would be, as you're facing the building, it would be on the right. It would be the east wing of the conservatory, and this is a cooler temperature room. If you wanted to equate it to anything, it's pretty much San Francisco climate. So it's maybe 70 during the day and in the 50s at night. And so it's much cooler than the first room we were in. And the plants in here are all would be termed cloud forest or high altitude plants. I'm standing under a Nepenthes, or one of the pitcher plants. This is from the mountains in Borneo. And you can see this is the basal pitcher. It's a pitcher at the base of the growth. As the vine gets bigger, it produces a completely different looking pitcher, much smaller and greener, and it doesn't have the markings of the basal pitcher. Another thing about Nepenthes is that they are also dioecious. You have male plants and female plants. So this is a male plant. Those are the flower spikes up above, and they produce pollen, which you would need a female plant in order to produce seed. So it's very unusual to see so many flower spikes on a plant like this. And growing in the pot, these are planted quite often in New Zealand sphagnum moss, which comes packaged and dry. And under the right conditions, like we have here in the greenhouse, the moss comes to life, and this is New Zealand sphagnum looks like. It's extremely pure and clean, and is sort of an ideal medium for propagating cuttings and that sort of thing. The Nepenthes will root right into this material. I'm standing in front of a Sobralia orchid. This is a type of orchid that comes from Guatemala down through Panama, Colombia, and into Ecuador and Peru. So different species of these run that whole gamut through Central and South America. Again, it's a high altitude cloud forest plant. It's what would be termed a terrestrial orchid. So in nature, it grows in the ground. When I was in Ecuador, we would be out in the country driving on the country roads, and these would be on the road cuts on the side, growing out of the ground. And you can tell them some people call them the bamboo orchid. The canes or the growth resembles bamboo. And they normally in the summer produce these big, large cattleya-like flowers, which we're very lucky today, and there's so many in flower. Each flower lasts anywhere from 1 to 4 days. And then they start to wilt, and you'll get maybe 2 or 3 flowers from the same stem. But they're very short-lived, but the plants grow quite well outside in San Francisco in the shade, in the ground. In Ecuador and Peru, quite often you see them where they've clear-cut the trees, and so they're exposed to the sun. And when they're grown very bright, these stalks, instead of being 6 feet tall, the canes will be maybe 3 feet, because they're not reaching for the light like they are in the shade. Okay, we're in the aquatic plant room in the conservatory. This would be the far east side of the conservatory, and Thomas panned over the giant water lilies that are here. They're not flowering, unfortunately, but they make these huge lily pads. And there are warm Nepenthes. This is a warm, humid, super humid. This is a Metanilla magnifica from the Philippines. And you can see as the flower spike develops, the flowers are the same, but that produces these beautiful bracts over the anterior flowers, and then as you get down to the bottom, they're without the bracts. But it's a warm, tropical growing plant, quite showy. Okay, I'm here with Kristen Natoli, the Chief Nursery Specialist for the conservatory, and Kristen is in charge of all of the growing and operations of the conservatory and plants. And
hello to City College Horticulture Greenhouse Production. Of course, we love the City College Horticulture Program. We work closely with your team of skilled instructors, and of course what we do here is a little different for production. We get to focus on each individual plant separately, which is a joy. Like, each individual plant is a work of art in itself. And so how we manage our environment and how we manage our time is very different from production. But it's all the same in the end. It's making plants beautiful and enjoying their livelihood. This climate is the most difficult growing climate to create in a greenhouse. To be this consistently cool and this humid, and these plants have such a narrow threshold of tolerance. We are at an advantage because the Bay Area climate, you probably talked about this.
a little bit.
The Bay Area climate is, particularly San Francisco climate with our fog, can be similar to the growing climate for these plants. So it's one of the few places where we can capture this climate consistently. Other places, the outside climate is so different. It's difficult to consistently maintain. It takes so much energy to maintain inside. So we're very lucky to have this collection here. It's one of the reasons we have it, and it's one of the reasons why it's so important to come out and check it out.
Great. Well, thank you, Kristen.
Yeah.
It's a special treat being here.
Hey, Tom, have you seen Jake?
I haven't, Thomas, but we have Tom joining us here.
Oh,
We're in the potted plant room of the conservatory. This is the west wing, so if you're facing the conservatory to the left, and in this room, all different types of plants that are in pots, so they can rotate them in and out, depending what's in bloom. There's some staghorn ferns here that have fronds that look like antlers. This is the elephant ear staghorn. Its leaves look like giant elephant ears. This is Platycerium grande, one of the biggest Platycerium or staghorn ferns. There's many different types of staghorn ferns, and it's a sort of medium temperature room, not hot and humid like the pond room, but it's warm but more comfortable. This is another habenaria. This is Habenaria medusa. It gets its name because the lip, this is all the lip of the flower, is sort of fimbriated and looks sort of like Medusa's hair. Sometimes it's called the egret flower because it resembles egrets, the bird, but it is also in the same family. And you can see this one is starting to go somewhat dormant. The leaves are starting to turn yellow, and then as we get into the fall, they'll really turn yellow, and you stop watering it, keep it completely dry until next spring. So these will go for 5 or 6 months without water. They won't have any leaves, but they have a distinct dormancy period, and then they come back to life in the spring and produce these really cool egret flowers. I'm standing next to a Virrea, which is a tropical rhododendron. This group of rhododendrons come from the high altitude in New Guinea, Borneo, Malaysia, that little sort of peninsula of islands heading down towards Australia. They grow beautifully in San Francisco, outside. They're unlike the Himalayan types of rhododendrons that you typically see, in that they have beautifully colored flowers, lots of orange, yellow, red, colors that the other rhododendrons typically don't come in. The main difference between these and Himalayan rhododendrons is these are not hardy. They'll freeze if it goes below 32 degrees, but in San Francisco we rarely have extended periods with freezing temperatures. They are very shallow rooted. You can see this is a very short pot. The roots, if they're planted in the ground, only penetrate about 12 to 18 inches, and they're very suitable for containers